Hey everyone, welcome back to Humankind. Now, I really want to upfront this video by saying there's a lot of important information in here, okay? This is a video all about trade in Humankind, and there are some things that the game isn't quite upfront about with the trade system. It's a simple system, it's highly effective, and I swear to you, this will be the most significant thing you can do to improve your game in Humankind, I promise. I'm not even over-exaggerating here. Trade is, if you harness it properly, really freaking powerful, but as I say, there are some things that really aren't clear. Like, for example, if the empire that you're trying to trade with, like your neighbor here, has but one grievance against you, your trade will stop. You will not be able to trade, okay? There are lots of things we need to know. It's a wonderful system that can happen passively for you and get you insane benefits to all of your yields. Let's jump in and talk about the wonderful system that is trade in Humankind. So for starters, you're going to need things to trade and people to trade with, right? So if you head up to the top left of your screen and open up Diplomacy menu, the international relations screen with an empire, and you go to the trade tab, you'll see how you can trade with them. But first, you must have certain treaties in place, right? So here you can see trade is the very first option on the treaty screen. You have no trade, which is the default. You can then move to a only trading luxuries treaty, and then finally a trade everything treaty that will allow you to trade luxury resources and strategic resources. If you build up an alliance as well with the AI, you can upgrade this treaty even more to have completely unrestricted trade where you get more money and pay less for your items. So it can be worth pursuing the alliance function as well if you want to build up your diplomatic prowess with your neighbor. However, let's have a look at the trade interface itself. There are two different ways you can interact with it. Either way will give you the same benefits. Once we go through this, we're then going to move through and talk about some of the more experienced and nuanced things to do with trade in Humankind, like the cost of transporting goods and the different methods that your trade routes will take, and also actually how the trade routes themselves work, because believe it or not, even though it may not be quite as obvious as in Civilization 5 and Civilization 6, you do have trade routes in this game. You can plunder them. They are vulnerable, and they do pass through every territory along the way, spreading not only trade, goods, and money, but also some of this, your influence, and potentially your religion as well. So not only are you opening yourself up to wonderful riches, but also the enemy's culture, and you'll have to watch out for that if you don't want to suffer to cultural osmosis. That's a topic for another video, but let's jump in and talk more about trade. So if I open up my interface here with the Teutons, as it were, you can see all of the resources that they have connected and their strategic resources, right? Their luxuries and their strategic resources. If you hit the little drop-down menu here, you will firstly hover over the resource and see what benefit it can provide you. Gemstones in this case provide 4 stability per gemstone on all of my cities, and 2 gold per gemstone on every market quarter. If I can control majority of them and get the wondrous effect, providing I have one in my empire or I can build the patronage improvement on it, then I can get plus 5% money and stability. And it's the same throughout all of these resources. These things are incredibly powerful, and that is take home number 1 from this video. Do not sleep on your strategic resources. It's not just these ones you can trade for, but of course it's actually your own ones as well. So the coffee here is providing me with 2 gold, 2 industry, and 2 stability from the tile. But it's not the tile improvement that matters. Take a look up in the top left and you'll see all of the different luxuries that I currently have connected. My 2 salt are providing 10 food and 8 stability on all cities. I can nearly get the wondrous effect as well. If I get one more of them online, then it will be 10% food. That's insane because it's a scalable multiplier. Coffee is providing me with 2 food per farmers, and will also scale to that 10% as soon as I unlock the patronage tech. You can see that incense provides money, gold does too, and many resources around the map will provide you with all of these, from food, industry, money, science, the whole shebang. You can get everything from different resources. Now, how does it actually work in terms of trade, you might be wondering? Well, let me tell you. When you have a copy of a resource, or indeed 4 if you've got 4 gemstones, or 1 if you've got 1 silk, you'll be able to trade it on the open market and still keep its benefit. Indeed, Humankind takes a more pragmatic approach to trade. It says, okay, Jumbo, you're producing this coffee. You can trade it with other people, but we also acknowledge you're probably going to keep some for yourself, right? This is kind of generally how trade works in real life. You don't trade all of that luxury away, as civilization may tend to lead us toward thinking. Now, that's not to knock on Civ's trade system, because it's different in many ways and has its own strengths. I'm not trying to take away from civilization. What I'm trying to say here, though, is that Humankind is more pragmatic. So if I trade this coffee away, which will happen naturally to any of my, any empire who I open up a trade treaty with, right? So as soon as I open up a only trade luxuries treaty with the Teutons, they will be able to buy that coffee from me. I will still keep one coffee, or two if they're buying two, however many it is. I will still keep these two coffees up here, but they'll also gain access to coffee. Two coffees if they choose to buy them both. When you buy something from the AI, you also receive the benefit from them, and all you need to do is send them a one-off purchasing cost in order to attain that specific luxury or strategic resource. It's worth noting you can also buy everything from horses right the way through to uranium. They will keep a copy, but you will also gain a copy, okay? So it is not a single-use resource. You can harvest it, take benefit from it, and trade it. That is how resources work in Humankind. Now, just to show you the real strength of how powerful this trade can be, take a look at this. As you move through into the late game, grab more territories, particularly on larger maps. Here I have 11 tea, plus 22% food. I have 9 sage, which is providing me plus 27 food on all main plazas and administrative centers. I have all of the world's salt, right? I just have so much. Look at all of these benefits. I have the wondrous effect for ebony because I control the most. I'm getting plus 35% industry on all cities and plus 70 stability. This is how not only you keep on top of stability, you'll notice all of these provide stability. If you are struggling with stability at all, start trading. Build up your trade. But more than that, look at these insane yields I'm getting. Plus 25% money on all cities. That's empire-wide. Thanks to me having 5 incense. 3 that I've got access on from my cities, and 2 that I'm buying from the Zulu. I mean, this is just a truly powerful setting. Also, you'll notice I'm getting all of these strategic resources as well. So if you're struggling to get access to uranium or copper, whatever it is, the resource that you need, it might be time to buddy up with one of the AIs and start buying them off them. Also, you don't just have to use the diplomatic function to buy things either. You can actually just scroll across the map and find a resource that you like the look of, click on it, and purchase it. You can see here, let's have a look, let's do an example. Here are the Mongols. I can click on this resource. Firstly, I can see how trade is flowing for this resource. Secondly, when I'm coming to buy it, I get to choose what mode of transport I would like. Land transport is safer, it's the default option, and it's more expensive than naval transport. In this case, when you choose naval transport, units will first move by land, but then wherever possible, they will use naval transport routes, right? You can see, have a look at this massive line as I stretch all the way across the world, down around Australia, through the Australian ports, right? We're stopping off, and then all the way over here to me in South Africa. I'm going to choose that. It's really cheap as well to buy these resources, by the way. At the moment, it feels, to be honest, pretty dang broken because these things are ludicrously cheap. Let's take a look. 167 gold to connect up one of those strategic resources. Great. You can see I'm already buying basically everything I possibly can off the Mongols here, who, as luck would have it, I can actually upgrade to this, Customs Union. This is the upgraded form of the previous trade treaties, and you can see here the buyer is acquitted from any non-essential fees when accessing the Empire's resources, but the seller still gains the same amount of money. So it's cheaper for me to buy, but the seller still gets the same profits. I'm going to propose that. They're going to refuse it because F me. However, I'm still going to head back in here and purchase from them. I don't mind paying full price. Why don't I mind paying full price? Well, because I'm making 45,000 gold per turn. So let's jump in and head back into the trade screen. You'll see they've got 2 more sage for me. I'm going to buy that. Oh, look, 49 gold for a nice, safe land transport route. Let's have a look and see the trade route. You can see it's moving literally just from this territory to this one. Incredibly safe. Nobody's probably going to be able to pillage that. 64 gold, I'll buy it. What did I buy for that 64 gold? Well, I bought another copy of Sage. What does Sage do? Well, at the minute, it's providing 33 food on my administrative classes, 44 stability, and if I can get the wondrous effect, even more power. This is the power of trade in the late game. Look at all of these resources that I'm getting just from this one trade partner. And as you saw, they're not even my best one, despite me having an alliance with them. The amount of resources I have up here is insane. Absolutely insane. This is how you really scale your game. But before I conclude this video, I have some extra tips here that you'll want to bear in mind to ensure that once you've purchased these resources, like this one here, which can provide plus 45% science, you also need to make sure that you maintain these trade routes, or at least make sure that they're protected. And there are a couple of things I want to bring to your attention. First and foremost, as you noticed before, when we were looking at those trade routes, we could trace them across the map, right? So you can see that from any trade route, if I select any single one, I can find the resource on the map, and whoa, it's busy. And yeah, it is. In the early game, it won't be as busy as this, obviously, but in the late game here, you can see all of these different trade routes across the map. You can see what territories they're moving through, as well as where they end up. Now, it's important to note that they carry influence and religion through every territory that they move through, right? Have a look at these goods. Follow these arrows along. Look at them go. Every territory that they pass through, they are providing influence and religion, spreading from the original person and out to the others. Look at all these routes go. But then, once it arrives, the territory that it arrives at will receive the full penalty. So here, South Africa is as if it is right next door to its trading partners in terms of how influence and religion is spreading to it. We're of course making money from all of these resources that we're naturally trading off, but maintaining them for ourselves, so there's no harm in trading, okay? There is no harm in trading unless you don't want the AI to gain access to your resources because you don't want them to get the benefit. So always when you're trading, try and be the person who is doing the most of it, right? The more you trade, the better you'll get. You can swap here to the export screen and see just where all of your goods are going. In this case, I've got a very big empire, so I'm tracking a lot of goods and services, but of course if I hover over each one and click on it, I can trigger some trade arrows, and you can see these resources flowing across the map. A few more things to note here. Every territory that it does pass through does create that trade node, as I discussed. If it's passing through unclaimed territory, it'll just sort of put it roughly in the middle, and you can then claim it later to get the benefits. But if it's claimed, it will always pass through either the administrative center or the main plaza. You can see it's just cutting straight through my territories, but not moving through, say, market quarters. So there's no real benefit to placing trading posts, if you will. It always chooses the territory. However, if it's trading via the sea or via the air, then trade routes will move through those appropriate settings. So here, I'm trading out of this harbor where sea trade is being conducted. Which brings me to a pretty important point. Suspending and breaking trade routes. There are many ways that trade routes can be suspended or entirely broken. The first is if the seller or buyer has any unsettled demands. This will cause an embargo across your trade, and you won't be getting the full benefits from your trade unless the demands are accepted, refused, or withdrawn. Now, that's not to be confused with grievances. You can have grievances like this, right? Oppressing the faithful, stopping my trade. You just can't have any demands. You must settle your demands, or your trade with an empire will be stalled. It's also worth noting you can trade with those independent people empires as well. Just another little sort of tip for experts. There are none really left on the map at this point in my game, but early game, you can trade with those independent people and get access to their resources too. And something useful to bear in mind, particularly if you can't get the territory by force. It's quite important then that you maybe trade with them to pick up their resources early on while you work on influencing them into your empire. Empires along a trade route where downgraded treaties have been brought into force, right? So they refused this one. They could also choose to say, downgrade me, right? They could downgrade me to cheap trade, and they could then downgrade me back the way through the basic trade proposals as well. If they declare war on me, if I declare war on them, if we close our borders to each other as well, naturally shutting off borders will negate trade. And if part of the trade route changes hands from one empire to another, i.e. if there's war, and some guy, right, this guy here, he comes in and he takes all of these pink territories, and I can't get through to trade anymore, then my trade routes will also be suspended. So there's a certain element of keeping a strategic look over the map here as well. Likewise, if trade routes are blocked, ransacked, or bombarded by enemy units. So, actually, an extra point to note, having a naval fleet, not necessarily a bad idea, because if you're at war with someone, you can come along and pillage all of their harbors and get huge benefits. This is another thing that isn't really talked about a lot by the developers, but like if I was fighting these guys here, I could sweep along these coastlines and absolutely ransack and pillage my way through. It is actually almost worth doing what my enemies have done here, building a really substantial fleet and just sailing around and causing absolute chaos on the open seas. The ransacking player will receive quite a bit of money as well, obviously, so it's worth doing. The buyer, however, will receive a grievance against you, so you will sort of annoy people and generate war support if you're not already at war with them. A couple of other really, really minor points to note. Normally you can't trade with empires that you're at war at. However, there is a civic in the later game here on the civics tree, which will allow you to trade. It's called, I believe it's called international trading, and it's under the trading civics. So you can still trade with people you're at war with if you grab that, but otherwise you won't. And then finally here, folks, at the end of the video, it is important to note that there are various benefits to having trade routes beyond just the monetary ones, right? So I've already covered the fact that you can spread your influence and spread your religion. Merchant cultures have a merchant ability which will double the income that you generate from your trade, so that can be pretty powerful to add into your coffers if you're a merchant empire in particular. At the moment you can see I'm not particularly struggling, but my cities themselves, man, thanks to them, they are just producing an incredible amount of gold. Look how much my capital is making here from all sorts of different things, including traders and trade routes. Now you might say, oh, it's only 500, it's not that much, but it's important to note that there are other things at play here as well, and this is my final point. Certain emblematic quarters, for example, like Satrap's Palace or Luxuries Market, give you +3 money per trade route, and that shows up on the city itself in this menu, not necessarily on the traders or the number of trade routes. So in this case, my banks, food plazas perhaps, or actually more importantly, the district itself. That 6,830 gold that's being generated from my city districts, and the 1,360 that's being generated from infrastructure, as well as my wholesalers, is being scaled by various things to do with my trade routes. Legacy trade effects as well, plus 10% money from certain natural wonders around the map, right? Of course, you get the base yield, but then finally also those infrastructure yields, customs farm, customs agency, right? All of these infrastructural projects in your cities. It is absolutely worth building some of the gold ones if you're gonna adopt a really powerful trading empire like I've tried to do here. I haven't done it to the greatest extent, right? You can see I don't have, for example, airports, which provides air trade routes in my cities. That would be something I would look into, but more importantly, just to reiterate, these infrastructures, really powerful when they scale with traders, right? Here, +2 money per traders. Here again, +1 money generated from ongoing trade. Don't sleep on these because they will add insane yields to your city districts and your city centers. Guys, I hope I've conveyed to you the real power of trade in Humankind. Seriously, 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 do not sleep on this. Constantly check, can you buy more trade routes? Can you be purchasing more luxuries? Every single one of these silk that I provide, +6 industry on Marcus Quarters, if I can get up to the wondrous effect by having 5 out of 10, and these guys are willing to sell me 4, I think I can manage that, providing I have one on my territory that I can upgrade once I get the patronage technology. I'm getting +25% industry across the board, and that's just from silk alone. These resources are incredibly powerful. You should of course be trading them and building your own, improving your own, whether it be through influence on newly established outposts or by constructing the improvements in your cities. Don't sleep on improving your luxuries and strategic resources, but crucially your luxuries at all cost. Thank you very much for joining me today. Do stick around, like the video if you fancy helping me ride the YouTube algorithm, and until next time everybody, I'll see you then. Take care and bye-bye.